The tin cup trembled in Lily Morrison's hands as she stood in the dusty general store, her last silver dollar clutched between white-knuckled fingers. 3 days without eating had left her hollow-eyed and unsteady. The storekeeper, a rotund man with tobacco-stained teeth, crossed his arms and shook his head. "That ain't enough for bread and beans both, girl. Choose one." Lily's gaze dropped to her mother's wedding ring, the only thing of value she had left. She began to slide it off her finger, the band catching on her knuckle, when a deep voice cut through the afternoon heat like a knife through butter. "Put that back on your finger." She turned to find a man filling the doorway, backlit by the harsh Wyoming sun. He was tall, broad-shouldered beneath a dusty black shirt, with eyes the color of storm clouds and a jaw that looked carved from granite. Silas Blackwood, the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties, stepped into the store with the confidence of a man who owned half the territory. Before you continue with this tale, I'd love to ask a small favor. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and hit that like button. It truly matters to us and motivates us to bring you more quality content like this. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's get back to Lily and Silas. I said put it back on. Silas's voice softened slightly as he approached, his boots heavy on the wooden planks. "Gold isn't what we need here. You are." Lily stared at him, confusion and suspicion warring in her exhausted mind. "I don't understand, sir." "My housekeeper left last week. Ran off with a prospector." He turned to the storekeeper. "Put her order on my account, Henderson, and add a month's worth of supplies." His eyes never left Lily's face. "You can work it off at the Blackwood Ranch. 3 meals a day, separate quarters, and wages." I can't cook much beyond basics," Lily stammered, her pride warring with her desperation. "Can you learn?" She straightened her spine, meeting those storm-gray eyes. "Yes, sir." "Then we have a deal." He extended his hand, calloused and strong. "Name Silas Blackwood." Lily Morrison. Her hand disappeared into his, and she felt something shift in the air between them, like the moment before lightning strikes. The Blackwood Ranch sprawled across 15,000 acres of Wyoming grassland, with mountains rising purple and majestic to the west. The main house was a 2-story structure of hewn logs and river stone, far grander than anything Lily had ever lived in. Silas showed her to a small but clean room off the kitchen, with a real bed and a window overlooking a meadow where wildflowers nodded in the. Silas caught her before she hit the floor, his arms iron bands around her waist. "Go slow," he murmured, settling her onto the bed. "You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you." Something in his voice made her throat tighten. She hadn't felt safe in 2 years, not since her father had gambled away at her farm and tried to sell her to settle his debts. She'd run, lived rough, and barely survived the winter. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once and left, closing the door softly behind him. The first week passed in a blur of learning. Lily discovered that Silas lived alone except for his ranch hands, who bunked in a separate building. He was a quiet man, economical with words, but generous with patience as he taught her his preferences. He liked his coffee strong enough to strip paint, his eggs over easy, and his bread fresh every morning. But it was the evenings that surprised her. After supper, Silas would sit on the porch with his ledgers, and Lily found herself joining him, mending clothes or snapping beans for the next day. They'd talk about the weather, the cattle, the way the light turned gold on the mountains at sunset. Sometimes they wouldn't talk at all, and the silence was comfortable as an old quilt. One evening, 3 weeks into her employment, Silas looked up from his accounts. "You ever ride a horse?" "No, sir. My father kept a mule, but don't call me sir. Makes me feel ancient." A rare smile tugged at his mouth. "And you should learn. This is ranch country. Come on." He led her to the corral, where a gentle mare named Blossom waited. For the next hour, as the sun painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Silas taught her to mount, to hold the reins, to move with the horse's rhythm. His hands on her waist, as he lifted her into the saddle, sent electricity racing up her spine. His patient instructions, delivered in that low rumble of a voice, made her forget to be afraid. "That's it," he encouraged as she managed a full circuit of the corral. "You're a natural." Lily laughed, actually laughed, and realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt joy. When she looked down at Silas, his face turned up to her with something like wonder in his eyes. Her breath caught. "Thank you," she said softly, "for all of this. You earned it." He reached up to help her down, and for a moment she was suspended between horse and ground, held in his strong arms, their faces inches apart. She could see amber flecks in his gray eyes, could smell leather and sage and something uniquely him. Then he set her carefully on her feet and stepped back, clearing his throat. "Better get inside, before it's full dark." But something had changed between them, and they both knew it. The change became impossible to ignore. Lily caught herself watching Silas when he didn't know, admiring the way he moved, all controlled power and unconscious grace. The way he treated his animals with gentle hands, and his ranch hands with firm fairness. The way he'd leave wildflowers on the kitchen table without comment, their stems tied with twine. And Silas found excuses to be in the house more often. He'd come in for water 3 times in an afternoon, or suddenly remember something that needed discussing right when Lily was kneading bread, her flour-dusted hands working the dough while he tried not to stare at the curve of her neck. They were circling each other like wary animals, drawn together but afraid of what that meant. The breaking point came during a summer storm. Thunder rolled across the prairie like cannon fire, and lightning split the sky in jagged white forks. Lily was closing windows when she heard a crash from Silas's study. She ran to find him on the floor, a fallen bookshelf pinning his leg, blood seeping through his torn trouser leg. "Don't move!" She knelt beside him, her hands already assessing the damage. A deep gash ran along his thigh where the shelf's edge had caught him. "This needs stitching." "I'm fine," he gritted out, trying to push the shelf off himself. "You're bleeding all over your expensive rug." She grabbed his shoulders. "Be still and let me help you, you stubborn man." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or admiration. He stopped fighting and let her work. Lily fetched water, clean cloth, and the medicine kit. Her hands were steady as she cleaned the wound, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd learned basic doctoring from her mother, but this was different. This was Silas's skin beneath her fingers, warm and vital. His sharp intake of breath when she dabbed whiskey on the cut. "Go slow," he said through clenched teeth. "It hurts." "I'll die before I hurt you more than necessary," she murmured, threading the needle with practiced movements. "But this has to be done." She worked in concentrated silence, her stitches small and even. Silas watched her face the whole time, studying the furrow of concentration between her brows. The way she bit her lower lip, the gentleness of her touch, even as she performed a painful task. "Where'd you learn to do that?" he asked when she tied off the last stitch. "My mother. She tended to everyone in our valley before she died." Lily sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I was 12 when she taught me. Said a woman should know how to patch up the people she loves." The last word hung in the air between them like smoke. "Lily," Silas's voice was rough. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to his, and what she saw there made her heart stop and restart in a new rhythm. Want, need, and something deeper, something that looked like the answer to every prayer she'd ever whispered into the dark. "I can't keep pretending," he said quietly. "Can't keep acting like you're just my housekeeper, when you're the first thing I think about every morning and the last thing every night." "Silas, let me finish." He reached up, his hand cupping her cheek with devastating tenderness. "I know I'm older than you. I know I'm rough around the edges and not much to look at. But I see you, Lily Morrison. I see a woman who's survived things that would break most men. I see strength and kindness and a heart that deserves someone who'll treasure it. And I want to be that someone." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You are something to look at," she whispered. "You're everything I never let myself hope for." "Then why are you crying?" "Because I'm afraid." The confession tore out of her. "I'm afraid of trusting this, of trusting you, of believing this is real and not just loneliness or gratitude." Silas sat up despite his injured leg, wincing but determined. He took both her hands in his thumbs stroking over her knuckles. "I can't promise you won't ever hurt again. Life out here is hard, and I'm not perfect. But I can promise you this. You're not property. You're not a burden. You're a person worth cherishing, and I will spend every day proving that to you if you'll let me. I want to believe you. Then believe this." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and pressed his lips to her forehead. It was chaste, almost reverent, and it undid her completely. She leaned into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and let herself cry for everything she'd lost and everything she was terrified to want. Silas held her through it all, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring nonsense words of comfort against her temple. "Together," he said finally. "We'll figure it out together. All right?" She nodded against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, letting herself believe for the first time that maybe, just maybe, she could have this. The summer deepened, and so did their connection. Silas recovered quickly, though Lily fussed over him like a mother hen, much to his amusement. She changed his bandages every morning, her touch gentle and sure. And if her hands lingered a bit longer than necessary on his skin, neither of them mentioned it. He taught her to shoot, standing behind her at the fence line, his arms bracketing hers as he showed her how to sight down the rifle barrel. "Breathe out slowly," he instructed, his breath warm against her ear. "Squeeze the trigger, don't pull." The rifle kicked against her shoulder, and the bottle on the fence post exploded in a spray of glass. "I did it!" Lily turned in his arms, her face alight with triumph, and found herself pressed against his chest, their faces so close she could count his eyelashes. "You did," he agreed, his voice gone rough and low. "You're full of surprises, Lily Morrison." "So are you, Silas Blackwood." She reached up, her fingers tracing the scar that cut through his left eyebrow. "How did you get this?" "Bar fight in Cheyenne, 5 years ago." He caught her hand, pressing her palm flat against his cheek. "I was younger and stupider, thought I had to prove something. And now, thank you." Now I know the only thing worth proving is that I can be the man you deserve." The words hung between them, heavy with promise. Lily rose on her toes, her intent clear, but Silas pulled back slightly. "Don't," he said roughly. "Don't kiss me unless you mean it, unless you're sure." "I'm sure," she breathed, and closed the distance between them. The kiss was everything and nothing like she'd imagined. Gentle at first, almost questioning, then deeper as Silas's control frayed and his arms tightened around her waist. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. Lily melted into him, her fingers tangling in his dark hair, tasting sunlight and coffee and promise on his lips. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Silas rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe the first day when you looked at me with those defiant eyes and agreed to learn. Maybe later, when I watched you sing while you worked and realized this house had been empty before you filled it. But I love you, and I need you to know that before anything else happens. I love you too." The words came easily, naturally, like water finding its level. "I was so afraid to, but I do." They stood there in the golden afternoon light, wrapped in each other, the rifle forgotten at their feet, and let the truth of it settle into their bones. But happiness in the West was never guaranteed. 2 weeks later, a stranger rode into the ranch yard. Lily was in the garden when she heard the horse, and something in the sound made her blood run cold. She stood slowly, shading her eyes against the sun, and felt her world tilt when she recognized the rider. Caleb Thornton, her father's creditor, the man who'd claimed her as payment for a debt. He was exactly as she remembered, tall and snake mean, with a smile that never reached his pale eyes. He swung down from his horse like he owned the place, his gaze finding her across the yard. "Well, well," he drawled. "Lily Morrison. Been looking for you a long time." Silas appeared from the barn, his posture deceptively relaxed, but Lily could see the tension in his shoulders. "Can I help you?" "Name's Thornton. Caleb Thornton." He tipped his hat mockingly at Lily. "Come to collect what's mine." "Nothing here belongs to you." Silas's voice had gone dangerously soft. "Turn your horse around and ride out. That girl there owes me $500. Her father signed a contract before he drank himself to death." Thornton pulled a folded paper from his vest. "All legal-like. She comes with me, or I take it out of your hide and this pretty ranch." "That contract is void," Lily said, finding her voice. "I was sold against my will. That's illegal in Wyoming territory." "Is it now?" Thornton's smile widened. "Well, we'll let the territorial judge decide that. I've got friends in high places, girl. You really think anyone's going to take the word of a woman over a respected businessman?" "They'll take mine." Silas stepped between them, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. "I'm Silas Blackwood. This is my land, and Lily Morrison is under my protection. You want to challenge that? You'll do it through proper legal channels. But you set foot on my property again, uninvited, and I'll put you in the ground." Something ugly flickered in Thornton's eyes. "Big words from a man who's gotten soft. Word is you've been playing house with that little dove. What do you think people will say when they find out you've been harboring another man's property?" "She's not property," Silas growled. "She's a person. And if you ever speak about her that way again—" "Silas, don't." Lily touched his arm. "He's not worth it." Thornton laughed. "Smart girl, but not smart enough to stay hidden. I'll be back with the law, Blackwood. You can count on that." He rode out in a cloud of dust, leaving devastation in his wake. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed, her carpet bag packed, trying to find the courage to leave. If she disappeared, Thornton couldn't use her to hurt Silas. She could head north to Montana Territory, find work, disappear into anonymity. She was reaching for her bag when her door opened. Silas stood in the doorway, still dressed, his eyes taking in the packed bag with grim understanding. "No," he said flatly. "Whatever you're planning, no. You don't understand. I understand you're about to run because you think you're protecting me." He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands on her shoulders. "I understand you think that contract has any kind of legal standing, which it doesn't. And I understand you're scared. But running isn't the answer. He'll ruin you," her voice broke. "He'll tie you up in legal battles. He'll spread lies about us. Everything you've built means nothing without you." Silas's hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Do you hear me? This ranch, the money, the reputation, it's all just things. You're what matters. And I'm not letting you face this alone. What can we do?" "We fight." His eyes blazed with determination. "Together. I've got lawyers. I've got friends in Cheyenne who owe me favors. And I've got something Thornton doesn't have." "What's that?" "The truth. And you." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "Marry me, Lily. Tomorrow. We'll ride into town and stand before the preacher and make it legal. He can't claim you if you're my wife. And even if he tries, he'll have to go through me." "That's not how I wanted to be proposed to," she said, laughing through her tears. "Then I'll do it right." Silas dropped to one knee, right there in her little room, and took her hand. "Lily Morrison, you walked into my life when I'd given up on happiness. You brought light and laughter and love into every corner of this house. You're brave and strong and beautiful, and I don't deserve you, but I'm selfish enough to ask anyway. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend my life proving I was worth the risk?" "Yes." She pulled him to his feet and kissed him hard. "Yes, you stubborn, wonderful man. Tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow." But Thornton didn't wait for the law. The next morning, while Silas was in the barn with his foreman discussing the day's work, 3 of Thornton's men rode in. Lily was alone in the kitchen when they kicked in the door. She grabbed the cast-iron skillet and swung it at the first man through, catching him across the temple. He went down hard, but the other 2 were on her before she could scream. "Boss wants to see you," one of them grunted, wrestling the skillet from her hands. "Let me go." She fought like a wildcat, biting, scratching, kicking. One of them backhanded her, and she tasted blood, but she didn't stop fighting. Her mother had taught her to stitch wounds, but her father, in one of his rare sober moments, had taught her to never go quietly. She was still fighting when Silas appeared in the doorway. What happened next would become legend in those parts. Silas didn't say a word. He simply moved, and when he moved, it was with the controlled violence of a summer storm. The first man went down with a broken jaw. The second dropped when Silas's fist connected with his gut, driving the air from his lungs. The third tried to run, but Silas caught him by the collar and threw him through the doorway onto the porch. "Lily," Silas turned to her, and she saw murder in his eyes. Murder and terrible, focused rage. "Did they hurt you?" She touched her split lip. "Nothing that won't heal." "That's not what I asked." He moved to her, his hands shaking as they cupped her face, tilting her head to examine her injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "I'm all right." She caught his wrists. "Silas, I'm all right." Some of the killing fury drained from his eyes, replaced by something worse. Fear. "When I saw him hit you," his voice cracked, "I can't lose you, Lily. I can't. You won't. She wrapped her arms around his neck, holding him tight. You won't. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. They stood there, clinging to each other amid the wreckage of the kitchen, while Silas's ranch hands secured Thornton's men, and someone rode for the sheriff. When they finally pulled apart, Silas's expression had hardened into something implacable. This ends today, he said. Get your good dress. We're going to town. The ride to town was tense, with Silas's men forming a protective cordon around them, and Thornton's captured thugs trussed up and dragged behind. Word had spread fast. The telegraph operator was a gossip, and by the time they reached the main street of Prospect Creek, half the town had turned out to watch. Thornton was waiting outside the sheriff's office, his lawyer beside him, looking smug as a cat with cream. His expression changed when he saw his men being hauled in like sacks of grain. "You'll pay for this, Blackwood," he snarled. "That's assault! I'll have your ranch." "Your men broke into my home and attacked a woman under my protection," Silas interrupted, his voice carrying across the street. "Sheriff Matthews, I want them arrested for attempted kidnapping and assault." Sheriff Matthews, a grizzled veteran with a legendary mustache, spat tobacco juice and nodded. "Sounds about right to me. But we've got a problem, Silas. Thornton here says he's got a legal claim on the girl. Show me the contract." The lawyer stepped forward, looking nervous. "It's perfectly legal, signed and witnessed." "Let me see it." Judge Harriet Cole appeared from the courthouse, her gray hair pinned severely, her eyes sharp as knives. She was the territory's first female judge, appointed the previous year, and she had a reputation for brooking no nonsense. "I'll determine what's legal and what isn't." She read the contract with pursed lips, then looked at Lily. "How old were you when this was signed?" 17, ma'am. And I didn't sign it. My father did." "Were you present during the signing?" "No, ma'am. I didn't know about it until Mr. Thornton came to collect me. I ran away instead." Judge Cole's eyes narrowed. Under Wyoming territorial law, as of last year, a woman cannot be sold or traded as chattel. Any such contract is void. Furthermore, this document doesn't bear the young woman's signature, making it doubly invalid. She ripped the paper in half. "This is worthless, Mr. Thornton, and attempting to enforce it makes you guilty of attempted kidnapping. But her father had no legal right to sell her. The judge's voice could have cut glass. And you, sir, are lucky I don't have you horsewhipped out of town. If I ever hear of you bothering this young woman again, I'll see you in prison. Is that clear?" Thornton's face went purple with rage, but he saw the mood of the crowd, saw the hands on gun butts, saw the hard eyes of men who didn't take kindly to the abuse of women, and knew he was beaten. He stormed to his horse and rode out, his fancy lawyer scrambling to keep up. In the silence that followed, Silas turned to Lily and took her hand. "Judge Cole, as long as we have you here, would you be willing to perform a wedding?" The judge's stern face softened into a smile. "I thought you'd never ask. Inside, all of you. Let's make this official." The courthouse was packed. Ranch hands, townspeople, even the saloon girls from the Lucky Lady crowded in to witness. Lily stood before the judge in her simple blue dress, her split lip still swollen, and felt tears streaming down her face as Silas slipped a gold band onto her finger. "I didn't have time to get a ring," he murmured. "This was my mother's. If you don't like it, I love it." She looked up at him, this strong, gentle man who'd saved her in every way that mattered. "I love you. I love you too." He kissed her then, gentle despite the audience, and the courthouse erupted in cheers. They rode back to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Lily sat in front of Silas on his big roan gelding, his arms around her waist, her head resting on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and felt something in her chest settle into place, something that had been broken for a long time. "What are you thinking?" Silas asked, his lips against her hair. "That I'm happy." She turned her head to look up at him. "That I didn't know I could be this happy." "Get used to it, Mrs. Blackwood." His arms tightened around her. "I plan on spending the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." "That's a big promise." "I know." He smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and lighter. "But I've got time. We've got time. Together." There was that word again. Together. It had become their talisman, their promise, their future wrapped up in one simple word. The ranch hands had made themselves scarce when they arrived home, giving the newlyweds privacy. Silas carried Lily over the threshold despite her laughing protests, setting her gently on her feet in the kitchen, their kitchen now, in their home. "I should warn you," he said, suddenly serious. "I've never been married before. I don't know how to be a husband. I'll probably mess it up sometimes. Then we'll learn together." Lily reached up to unknot his bandana, her fingers steady. "No expectations, no keeping score. Just us, figuring it out as we go." "That sounds perfect." He caught her hands, bringing them to his lips. "Are you sure you want this? Want me? It's not too late to—" "Silas Blackwood, if you try to give me an out now, I'll take that skillet to your thick skull." But she softened the words with a kiss. "I want this. I want you. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He kissed her then, deep and slow and thorough, and Lily felt the last of her fears melt away. This man, her husband, would never hurt her, would never see her as property or burden, would love her with the same steadfast strength he showed in everything he did. "Together," she whispered against his lips. "Together," he agreed, and carried her upstairs to begin their new life. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Lily had never known marriage could be like this. Laughter over morning coffee, easy companionship during the day's work, passion in the quiet hours of night. Silas was as good as his word, treating her as an equal partner in all things. He taught her the ranch business, showing her the ledgers, asking her opinion on decisions. She taught him to dance, pushing the kitchen table aside one evening and humming a waltz while he tried not to step on her toes. They had their first fight over whether to buy more cattle or invest in sheep. It was loud and passionate, with both of them stubborn as mules, until Lily started laughing at the absurdity of it, and Silas pulled her into his lap to kiss her senseless. They compromised. A few sheep for wool, which Lily wanted to learn to spin, and more cattle for the spring sale. "This is what marriage is," Silas said that night, holding her close in their big bed. "Not always agreeing, but always working it out." "I like it," Lily admitted. "I like that you listen to me, that you value my thoughts." "Why wouldn't I? You're brilliant." He kissed her temple. "You are the best decision I ever made." "No." She snuggled closer, her hand over his heart. "We're the best decision we ever made. Together." One evening in October, as the aspens turned gold on the mountainsides, Silas found Lily on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, watching the sunset. He settled beside her, draping an arm around her shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About before," she said slowly. About the girl who walked into that general store, ready to sell her mother's ring for a loaf of bread. About how lost she was, how scared. And now? Now I'm found. She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You found me, Silas. Not just physically, but in every way that matters. You saw a woman worth saving when I'd stopped seeing anything worth saving in myself. You saved yourselves, he corrected gently. You had the courage to run from Thornton, the strength to keep going when everything was against you. The resilience to trust again after everything you'd been through. I just gave you a safe place to land. You gave me everything. She cupped his face, rough with evening stubble, and kissed him softly. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep being you. Keep filling this house with light and laughter. Keep arguing with me about sheep and cattle. Keep dancing in the kitchen when you think I'm not watching. Keep being the best part of my every day. I can do that. She smiled. But I should probably tell you something. What's that? We're going to need to add on to the house. Another bedroom, maybe. It took him a moment. When understanding dawned, his face went through a series of expressions. Shock, wonder, fierce joy, before settling on something that looked like awe. You're sure? His hand went to her still flat stomach with devastating tenderness. The doctor in town confirmed it yesterday while you were at the cattle auction. Due in the spring. She covered his hand with hers. Are you happy? Happy? His voice cracked. Lily, I don't have words. I never thought I'd have this. A wife, a child, a family. I'd made my peace with being alone. And now you're stuck with us, she finished, laughing through her own tears. Best thing that ever happened to me. He pulled her into his lap, holding her like she was made of spun glass. Both of you, I promise, I'll be a good father. I'll protect you both. You'll be exactly who you are, Lily interrupted. Strong and gentle and good. That's all our child needs. That's all I need. They sat there as the sun disappeared behind the mountains and the first stars appeared, wrapped in each other and the promise of their future. The prairie wind sang through the grass, carrying the scent of sage and earth and home. 6 months later, on a morning when the prairie was painted with wildflowers, Silas paced the downstairs parlor, while the midwife and Lily's new friend, Martha, attended the birth upstairs. Every cry from Lily sent him toward the stairs, only to be turned back by Martha's stern warning to stay put. This is women's work, Silas Blackwood, she called down. You'll only get in the way. That's my wife, he growled. I should be with her. Then you should have thought of that 9 months ago, Martha shot back. But her tone was kind. She's strong. She'll be fine. Hours passed like years. Silas wore a path in the parlor rug, drove his ranch hands crazy with busy work, and generally made a nuisance of himself. When the first cry of an infant finally pierced the air, he was up the stairs before anyone could stop him, bursting into the bedroom with his heart in his throat. Lily was propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in white linen. She looked up when he entered, her face breaking into a tired smile. Come meet your daughter, she said softly. Silas crossed to the bed on shaking legs and looked down at the tiny face peeking from the blanket. She had Lily's delicate features and a shock of dark hair. As he watched, she opened her eyes, gray as a storm, just like his, and seemed to look right at him. She's perfect, he breathed. You're perfect. Thank you. Thank you for her, for all of this. What should we name her? Lily asked, stroking their daughter's soft cheek. Silas thought of his mother, who died when he was young, but who'd taught him to value kindness. "Rose," he said, "after my mother. Rose Emily Blackwood." "Perfect." Lily patted the bed beside her. "Sit with us." He did, carefully settling beside his wife, his arm around her shoulders, looking down at their daughter, his family. His heart walking around outside his body. "I love you," he said to both of them, "more than I knew it was possible to love." "We love you too." Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. "Our family, together." "Together," Silas echoed, and kissed his wife's forehead, while his daughter made small squeaking sounds and grabbed his finger with a grip that belied her size. It was, he thought, the best moment of his entire life. The years that followed were good ones. Rose grew into a spirited child who could ride before she could walk properly, who followed her father around the ranch like a devoted shadow, and who had her mother's kind heart and sharp mind. 2 years later, she was joined by a brother, James, who was quieter but just as determined. The Blackwood Ranch prospered. Silas and Lily built it into one of the most successful operations in Wyoming, known for fair dealing and quality stock. They added on to the house, just as Lily had predicted, and filled the rooms with laughter and love. On their 10th anniversary, Silas took Lily back to the general store where they'd met. Henderson, the storekeeper, was long retired, but his son ran the place now. Silas walked up to the counter and pulled a silver dollar from his pocket. "What's this for?" young Henderson asked. "10 years ago, your father wouldn't sell my wife bread and beans for $1 silver." Silas put the coin on the counter. "I want to pay what she would have owed that day." "Silas, that's silly," Lily protested, but she was smiling. "It's principle." Then he turned to her, taking her hands. "That day changed my life. You changed my life. You took a lonely rancher with too much land and no one to share it with, and you gave me purpose, meaning, love. Everything good in my life started the moment I walked through that door and heard you try to sell your mother's ring. I'm glad you stopped me." She squeezed his hands. "Though I should have known right then what kind of man you were. Gold isn't what we need here. You are. Do you remember saying that?" "I meant it then. I mean it now." He kissed her, right there in the store, not caring who saw. "You're what I need, Lily Blackwood. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, and all the days after. Just you." "Well," she said when they finally pulled apart, "you're stuck with me. For better or worse, remember?" "Always better with you." He tucked her hand into his elbow. "Come on, let's go home." They walked out into the sunshine of a Wyoming afternoon, hand in hand, and headed back to the ranch that had become so much more than a piece of land. It was a home filled with love and laughter, with children who would grow strong and kind, with a future as bright and wide as the prairie sky. The wealthy rancher had hidden behind the door to test his quiet maid one evening, wanting to know if she truly loved him or just the security he provided. What he'd heard her sing to their infant daughter had shaken him to his core. "Your father saved my life, little one, not with gold or promises, but by seeing me when I'd become invisible, even to myself. And now I get to love him every day for the rest of my life. We're the luckiest people in the world." When he'd stepped out, tears streaming down his face, she'd just smiled and held out her hand. "Were you testing me, Silas Blackwood?" "I'm sorry. I just needed to know that I love you." "I do. With everything I am, and I'll tell you as many times as you need to hear it." She'd kissed him then, their daughter between them, and whispered, "Together, always together." And they were, through seasons and years, through challenges and triumphs, through the full, rich life they built from the ashes of what they'd both lost. Together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Lily and Silas's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.